I welcome you all. Thank you so much for joining us and gracing us with your presence. Today, we are going to talk about log analysis and threat hunting. Now, threat hunting is kind of the buzzword for now. Initially, people started with log management, and then they moved on to like SIM. SIM further evolved into next generation SIM, and now everybody wants to get their hands dirty with threat hunting. So, today, we'll understand what's threat hunting, what's the baseline of it, how do you build your threat hunting database, then how do you build a team who's really efficient at threat hunting. Now you'll have to understand that threat hunting ultimately is a manual activity. This is something that you'll have to do yourself. The tools would only be able to help you so much because you cannot do everything with the automated tools. If you are able to do it, then there'll be no need for people like us. And so this is the front page. This is the first page. Sort of tried to come up with a lot of variations of what I should put in the first page. I thought the best to describe what we are going to do today is the cyber kill chain, because anyone and everyone who wants to get started with threat hunting needs to understand the cyber kill chain, right? Because all of our efforts will be put around these steps. How do you find and how do you detect and mitigate all these threats, all these threat vectors which are lurking in your network, which obviously none of the other tools can do for you, right? So this involves a lot of base concept because this is a very high level concept. If you talk about threat hunting, there are a lot of underlying concepts. I know that I have been given very limited time. So due to the lack of time, we are only going to touch on these concepts. Now, the best thing about today's session is we'll only build our bases today. We'll sort of talk about the pillars which hold the building. And in the next sessions, we'll talk about the floors. We'll go all the way to the terrace and then we'll complete the building. Right? So today, it will be more like a foundational training or a fundamental level talk. Feel free to ask any questions anytime. If you have any questions, queries, comments on any of these decks, any of these slides, please feel free to raise your voice, right? And we'll be most happy to answer your queries. All right. So with that, I just wanted to make this clear in the first slide that all of these ideas which I'm going to put forward in front of you, or all of these visualizations or the thoughts, these are of my own. I have gathered all of this information through all the practical experience which I have come across in the last 5.5 years in the industry and before that. So yeah, if there's anything which you think is conflicting your current thought process, it's possible. Obviously, there are no standards. When you come into cybersecurity, it's a very wide space, a lot of tangents to talk about, it's a multi-fold dimension, right? So obviously, I cannot cover everything for today. So let's try and get through the log analysis and threat hunting first, and we'll take your questions as they come. All right. So first things first, the agenda. We'll start with the log analysis, log management. That's a point that I have not mentioned here. Then we'll go to threat hunting, definitions, the basic modules. What is it? If this is an alien thing for you right now, do not worry. I am going to try and build a base for you in the next 30 minutes, and then we'll sort of try to build upon it. The pyramid of pain, a very popular sentence or a very popular keyword into the threat hunting, or I would say the blue teaming space. So we'll talk about that. One or two models, types of hunting, from network level, endpoint level, and everything. When I'll be going through the examples, I'll quickly open up a Windows server and I'll show you one or two free tools. So I'll also show you how you can do certain things at a very basic level, very granular level, and then you can build your kingdom around it. Right. So threat hunting, I've sort of tried to put a visualization here when you start with the log sources. So before that, threat hunting is really, as I said earlier, it's a very proactive and a very practical approach to try and hunt something literally. So there are two words which you can see, threat and hunting. If you take the literal meaning of hunting, it's taking up a manual effort and trying to catch something or hold on to something, which obviously you can do by an automated process, or you can do it manually, try and do it with your own hands, right? So throughout the presentations, I'll be taking real life examples for my analogy. So let me know if the example is not working out for you, and then we'll change it to something else which suits you. Right? So to set up the background really for threat hunting and for blue team and everything, very quickly, I'll go through an example in just 2 or 3 minutes. So imagine if there is a kingdom, you who are listening are the king or queen of your kingdom. So far, so good. You are managing everything. You have a very big fort. You have a lot of security deployed at various levels. There are 2, 3 villages inside your kingdom. There is a front gate which is heavily guarded with soldiers and cannons and swords and everything. So, outside of your fort, outside of your kingdom, really, there is a very dense forest, and there are looters, and criminals and everybody who tries to do malicious things, who tries to do non-legal things with people. Right now, as a king or a queen, you know that there is something bad which is happening there. You do not have any means to catch them directly. Also, they do not reveal themselves in the daytime. They only attack in the night when most of your defenses are at their lowest settings, or when people are sleeping. How do you resolve this? This is a very big question. If you want to maintain your integrity as a king or as a queen, you must do something for the people. So you come up with a thought that let's create a band of people, let's create a small party of people who will be skilled in a certain thing. They will be sent out into the jungle or into the forest rather than waiting for the criminals to come to us. We are going to the criminals, and they'll be skilled in hunting them, catching them. They'll know the place inside out. They'll know where to look, what to look for, and ultimately they'll find all those bad people who are trying to uh, work with us at the guerrilla warfare technique, right? So who are less in numbers but not revealing themselves directly. So this is how the guerrilla warfare works. So then it starts working out for you, and then you find out the people who are not directly accessible for you because they had their own way of hiding themselves. Now, if you have understood this example, you might have understood the threat hunting concept really. So this is what threat hunting really is. You have all your tools and technologies which are working in the most fantabulous manner. You have IDS, IPS, next generation firewalls. You have SIEM, you have EDR. Everybody is working just fine at their own level, but they can only do so much. They can only do searching on the basis of the patterns which you create, or on the basis of the rules which are imported, right? So all the knowledge base which is already there, already known to the mankind, they'll be imported in the tool and they'll be working out for you. What if people have gotten smarter on the other side and customizing their malwares, right? So once they customize their malware, you will have no way to hunt them or even see them operating through your traditional approach, which is a rule-based detection, right? Or a report-based detection. That is where threat hunting really comes into the play. So yeah, based on this, we'll try to build our concepts to the next levels. So let's take a visual very quickly. Also, I've just pinned a resource here. If you take a look at the bottom left, I have just put a hyperlink here, which is read more here. If you click onto it, this presentation will be distributed post this presentation. So if you click on this link, it will take you to a blog where you can read in detail about threat hunting, at least theoretically, right? Yeah. So log sources are the endpoints, could be a printer, could be an access pointer, could be a firewall, could be a Windows server, anything which generates logs. So we know everything generates a log. So an entity inside an organization is a log source. What you can do at the most basic level is the local log analysis. Let's say if you have a Windows server, you open up the event viewer, export the logs maybe in the Excel format, try to make some pivots, try to see what's happening on your endpoint. It can only take you so far, right? What if you want to scale it to hundreds of thousands of servers and try to do some pattern matching or pattern searching? It will be a very big process. It will be a Herculean task to do it. That is why local log analysis is not enough. You go on to the next step. You deploy a SIEM, which is a better solution compared to local log analysis, because SIEM is a central point where you can call in all your logs from all the endpoints across organization, across the globe, right? After that, you can create your rules, you can create your reports, you can do your searching, and everybody is happy. But what if the logs aren't enough into the SIEM based on the license or the performance or any other reason? There aren't enough logs in your SIEM. Because then comes a relative question, how much logging is enough for a secure solution? So this is a very open-ended question, a very relative question. For people who are starting with, let's say, SIM, they want to be involved into the security logs or the authentication logs or the audit trails. As and when they move forward to mature their SIM, they want to have application logs. They want to consume the DNS logs, which are very verbose, right? So there's a limitation to SIM as well. As you can see, I have pointed a right direction arrow, which takes SIM to incident respond to it. Let's say there's a malware which is caught by the SIM. So what you do is you remove it, you quarantine the system, you follow all those steps of incident response. Now, so everything leads to incident response. Ultimately, that was my point. Because for business, all they all they are mindful of is their business should be up and running at 99% of time or 100% of time. So a CEO or a CTO, they do not really care what tools and techniques you use to detect for threats and everything. They just want their systems to be secure and their business to run. Right? That is why everything leads to incident response, at least talking from the cybersecurity's point of view. Right. There comes the last block, which we are going to talk about today, is threat hunting. Right. Herein, you can create a server where you can dump all your DNS entries, all your endpoint entries, all your file records, integrity records, everything. And then you can put your through analysis here. Right. So this is your bailout condition of your SIM license issue or performance issue. Whatever you cannot do onto the SIM, even if you want to, you can do it on your threat hunting platform. Then comes the follow-up question, how do I build a threat hunting platform? We'll talk about that in just a minute. This is just to set the context. Okay, so moving on. So far, so good. Any questions? I've just described one slide, tried to best uh, try to give you the basic context, the background around log analysis and threat hunting. What is it? And then once we are familiar with it, we'll go through. So any questions? I'll just stop for 15 seconds for a question, maybe 10 seconds, and then we'll move forward. Right.
Yeah, Ankit. So we don't currently have any questions, but just to remind everyone, people viewing in, that all you need to do if you have a question is click the Q&A tab, right? And you can ask away, okay? And what we will do is we'll have strategic placed pauses provided by Ankit, obviously, and Ankit can go ahead and answer those questions. Ankit, for now we don't have any questions, but I think things are going to get interesting as we move ahead.
All right, cool. Thank you so much. Right. So let's quickly look at what's a log, what's an event, and then what's an alarm or alert, however you want to call it, however you want to wrap it. Right. So log is basically a record of whatever is happening on your endpoint. Somebody getting in, somebody getting out, somebody opening a Firefox, somebody running any other media player or something, right? There'll be an event. There'll be a log, right? So let's say Ankit logged in the computer at 9 a.m. today. So this will be a log. What's an event? Basically the same thing. The only difference is the suspicion level or the amount of suspicion that is built around the log. When it is interesting enough for an analyst to look into, it becomes an event which is different from log. So technically they're the same thing, so do not get confused. The terminology is different to give you a more contextualized view of what is happening in your organization. So rule of thumb, uh, only 10% or 5% of logs go on to become event. Okay, so let's say if you have 100 logs, 100 entries in a day on your organization, so only 5 or 10 are expected to become event. Right? If there are 50, 60 events coming in from your 100 logs, that means a lot of fine tuning is needed. On the other side, if only 1 or 2 events are occurring every 100 on every 100 logs, that means there is room for creating new rules and new pattern matching. So this is how you can measure how your SIM or how your log analysis platform is doing in your network. I've just taken a snap from a tool called Signify. So yeah, you can see the innermost rectangle shows you an event, and then there is an incident, which is event, and then there is an issue, which is the alarm, right? So something going up, going down, that's fine. something going up and down frequently in short time of frame, that becomes an event that is now suspicious. It is more important. As I have put an example here to exemplify the concept, log is someone logging to a system. Event is login failures, but 5 times back-to-back login failures in shorter time. That's an event. And then an issue would be, or an alarm would be, you create a rule that, fine, if there are 5 consecutive failures in 2 minutes or 1 minute maybe, coming in from Windows environment or Linux environment, then give me a notification, and then I would look into it. Why is it happening? Because it is not normal. It's not expected to behave that way. That means it is due for an investigation. From there on, you launch your investigation, and then you follow the incident response process as and when needed. So that is about log analysis. Now this is really important. I need you guys to put more attention to it, to log analysis, because this will be our basis of threat hunting. Threat hunting is nothing but customized log analysis, doing log analysis on custom or tailored events. That's it. Next, let's talk about two open source tools or free tools coming in from Microsoft. Now, when I talk about this, I wanted to make sure that you guys know about these things. And surprisingly, these things have existed from a long time, right? Let's say these were discovered and put forward in 2014 or 15. But when I started my journey with information security and cybersecurity, I did not know about all these tools. And I did not know that these were so powerful, so power packed, and then yet come for free. Okay, so yeah, uh, so I wanted to talk about Sysmon in particular. This is a system internals, a tool set rather, which has a lot of utilities. Everything is free, and all these are so small. They are just 2-3 MBs in size. So you can go ahead and install it on your endpoint and start testing with it. Start building your use cases around them. How you can do something with it. So these are very helpful in investigating something inside of an environment. Only talking about the Windows environment here, but yeah, these are mighty useful. Sysmon, or System Monitor as it stands, is a Windows system service. What it does, it simply enhances the logging. Okay, it simply enhances the logging level of your system. It gives you more detailed or more granular view into what is happening on your system. Somebody created a file, somebody launched an application, somebody logged in, logged out, or whatever. You'll have a detailed view of it. So this is so powerful that if you run PowerShell, if you go to google.com, or if you try to ping facebook.com, in an events, it was not possible to see everything coming in from the PowerShell environment. But yeah, if you have Sysmon, you'll have all those events coming in. That this application was triggered. You'll also see from where it was triggered, what is the integrity of that, how does that correlate with virus total. So you can do all those fantastic things. Use it along with Process Explorer to put a greater effect into your analysis. Process Explorer will tell you more about the processes, the child, the parent processes, the integrity of them. You can take out their hashes, and you can compare that hash to all the hashes which are put forward by the major antivirus systems, and then you can get a reputation out of it. Is this a bad binary, or is this a good or okay binary? You can also see a lot of other details like who has published this binary, right? Who's the creator of it and everything. So this is where I will show you something. This will be a very short demonstration towards the end. Okay, in the meantime, let's talk about another important aspect. Now, so just to remind you guys, this is a short session, so I'll not be covering everything in detail. We are not going to drill down into all of these because MITRE attack matrix itself is a ocean of knowledge. It's huge, and if I start to talk about it, if I start to talk about the TTPs in all these levels, it will take me 60, 70, or 80 minutes just to describe this matrix. So we are going to do it in the next sessions. We are planning to do it in the next session. This is where I said that this will merely work as a building block or as the pillars. Once we are good with the foundation, we can build your skyscrapers on top of it. Right. So this framework is a comprehensive matrix, as you can see on your right. And this is where the first screen comes into picture, the first screen of my presentation, where I just put forward a picture of the kill chain. Right? If you know that well enough, now you can understand that here. If you go from left to right, the first columns everywhere is the step of the kill chain. Like initial access, the first thing, execution is the second thing, and then so on and so forth. As the malware starts its journey onto an endpoint, it starts to unfold itself, start to take commands and do everything else which is malicious. You can find more and more behavioral inputs from this matrix. So you can use this matrix to a very good effect. If you know about the malware, if you know about its TTPs, the work of the malware is as good as done, because you can put custom blocks in your organization which are engineered specifically for that malware. Even if you do not have a standard rule, now you can create a custom rule which will block the malware from executing. So you are that much more secure against that malware compared to other organizations as well. This is why threat hunting is necessary. This is why people should start with a little bit of threat hunting in their environment, be it a very basic level threat hunting, very preliminary based level. But yeah, we should get going with it at least, like, just to get the flavor out of it. Right, so this is hugely beneficial not only for the red teamers, but threat hunters, the blue teamers, the defenders, everybody, because this gives you insight into what a malware can do at each steps. So you can either build your malware after reading this, or you can catch a lot of malwares after reading this. You can do both. It is divided, or it is focused on different levels. Enterprise matrix is a different thing. Mobile matrix and the cloud matrix are different things, which are focused on mobile and cloud respectively. What we are looking at is the enterprise matrix. So this is the basis of everything that we talk about into threat hunting, the pyramid of pain, or simply POP. Somebody in 2005 came up with this pyramid, or with this layered architecture, where they can put up some words and then describe them, how an adversary is affected with our efforts. So this is the map which relates the defenders, people who are proactively trying to defend an organization with respect to their efforts, and how much it will affect the other side, the hackers. So we all know that the hashes are something which are there in abundance, which are very trivial. Yeah. And that also goes out to show that this is something that is not very effective, or not mighty effective when it comes to blocking a malware. Simply because if you block one hash, they will change the file or the content of the file, and the hash will change. And nowadays, people are going towards fileless malwares. No file means no hash to begin with. Even if there is a file dumped on a system, if it's a polymorphic program, so hashing is the last thing that you want to consider, because every time a new trash line is added or removed from that program, the hash will change, and the existing hash will be of no use, right? So riding on top, the second level, the IP addresses, yes, a bit more effective, not effective a lot, because if I'm a hacker, I will simply connect to another public IP, start serving my malware, or start doing my phishing campaign. And then every day I come up with a new public IP. I use Tor, I use VPNs. There are a lot of methods to devoid of this, you know, uh, security measuring platform. Right? So IP addresses again is not something which is very effective if you're looking to defeat the malwares and defeat the hackers. Hashes and IP addresses do not come to your rescue at the highest level. Yes, they are effective, but not a lot. So coming on to the domain names, yes, if the malware has got a domain from where they are dropping their malware onto the endpoints, blocking that domain or that CNC server is good, but then they will have a lot of CNC servers working for them, depending upon the quality of the malware, and then how big of an empire they have, right? Also, if they have DGA, domain generation algorithms, so they'll keep on generating new domains, and that will also go down the line, right? Network host artifacts. Now we are getting into something interesting. Network can host artifacts which are relevant to a particular malware. You block them, and now you're starting to annoy the hacker as it's written here. Now you're starting to put up some challenge to him, right? Let's say if they use a specific port or a specific, you know, protocol to ship out their information or to drop the malware. If you block that combination of port and protocol, then they'll be left with no choice, and then they'll have to reconstruct the malware. Yeah. So that is where you can be a little more effective. Tools used by the malwares. Let's say a lot of malwares use mimicards, right? Which is a very popular tool coming out of, uh, let's say you can have it on the Kali Linux, right? You can also download it independently. It is used for password guessing, password spraying, password dumping, password cracking, and all those things. So, yeah, a lot of APTs use this tool as a part of their campaign. If you block that tool, that particular malware family is as good as done. They'll have to come up with a new plan, a new idea. They'll have to build the malware from scratch, which uses a different tool. See, so see how this is affecting the malware, and see how this is benefiting you. And that is why everybody is talking about the TTPs, and that is why TTPs is the buzzword right now, because everybody is done with the hashes and IP address. Nobody wants to block them. Yeah, this is all old. So the days when IOC is helped is long gone, right? The IOC is helped up to a certain point. Hashes and IP addresses do come in handy, but if you really want to block a particular campaign, which also is a 0 day or which is relatively new, so people are still researching into the malware, looking into the binary at the stack level. So there is time until when the hashes and IP addresses will be available. What do you do till then? Do you wait for the adversaries for the night to come to your kingdom and crash the party? Or do you actually have it what it takes and build an army or build a small troop and then send them into their forest? This is the question. And this is where threat hunting comes into the picture. So, yeah, any questions on Pyramid of Pain or previous concepts which I have touched, the free or open source tools from Microsoft, or the difference between or among log, event, and alert? Any questions around them? Anything which you did not understand, which did not make sense, which you think is something I should not speak about? So please feel free to drop in your questions. One of my colleagues will take it up.
Yeah, Ankit. So at present, we don't seem to have any questions. But
Great.
I'll just remind everyone that the Q&A tab is present. All questions are good. So please click the Q&A tab, even if it's a doubt about something, or if you would like uh, something be explained further. We can definitely do that.
Right. Thank you, Mervin, for the note. And also, adding on to Mervin's note, uh, please be very mindful that this is for your own good. This is for your own benefit. People who are listening, people who are watching us, people who are hearing us. Now, me and my friends who are the presenters here, we already know a little bit of these things. That is why we are explaining these, right? This is for your understanding. If there's something that bugs you, something that does not fits into your current thought process, so immediately go ahead and type your question. Could be anything as silly as what is the meaning of pain, or what is the spelling of pain again. I think I have something else in my mind. It could be anything, right? No question is bad. No question is silly. And this is for your own benefit. The more you ask, the more you learn. This is what I have heard so far. So that is why we are trying to get something out of you guys. Now, usually when I present these, you know, articles on threat huntings, or like the deck which I'm talking about right now, people ask me these questions again and again. That what you talk about is so good, so relevant. I just have this question: how do I get started with it? Actually, now this is all theory. I know this is all good. It sounds. This is visually very good. This is grammatically correct, and then your English and everything is very good. But what is the practical usage of it? This is a question which I get again and again. And then I say that once we have finished with building the foundations, maybe we can look into the practicals. The second thing is, if there were enough practicals available around threat hunting, we would not be talking about it in the first place, right? So as simple as that. You'll have to come up with your own sort of plan, and then your own thought process. How do you want to plan your activities around catching those malwares? How do you want to hunt for them? And if it starts to excite you more and more, then then you should understand that you're on the right track, and then you'll come up with a lot of your personal plans or customized plans, which will be fantastic, right? If it does not excite you, then we'll not be able to help so much. The whole point of this visual presentation is just you should get started with it. That is why I'm trying to stress onto this point that at least get started with it practically. Get those events onto your laptop, scroll through them, make some pivots around. Let's say if you have network activity logs, let's say you have traffic logs, you've imported the last 24 hours worth of traffic onto an Excel. Start making those pivots on your local level around the destination ports. If there are users, start making pivots around the users, the destination protocols, the packets exchange, and then quickly run your eyes through who is the person who has visited one particular site most of the times. A site which might not be allowed in our environment, but if because we do not have a current internet policy, they are visiting it. This is something that you can do. Nobody is stopping you from doing it. If you cannot do advanced threat hunting, at least you can do this. This is a very simple threat hunting concept which I'm explaining, and everybody should start trying with it, right? So it's very simple, as I said. Collect all that network level information, dump it onto an Excel, start making those pivots. Creating pivots is very easy. You just select everything that is in a sheet, you go on to filters, and then you create a, a pivot table. You start putting information, or you start putting columns into your values, and then you should have something out of it. Right. So yeah, that is it about pyramid of pain. We have talked about the TTPs. This helps the SOC guys mainly to understand how to fortify the defense against the hackers. Yeah. So I'm seeing some pop-ups in the Q&A. Marvin, if you can just take a look at the Q&A section. Let's entertain some questions if we have any. Otherwise, let's move on to the threat hunting model. This is to set the right context. Yeah. Anything? Any questions?
Sorry to interrupt, Ankit, but we have a question from Gaurav Singh. He would like
Super.
us to elaborate on TTPs and tools in POP.
Right. You just go back. Right. TTPs is everything that a malware does. How does it do it? Why does it do it? Not actually the why. The why is the motive part, which comes previous to TTPs. TTPs is more around how do they do it. Let's take another example, a real life example. Let's say if you're living in, let's say, Delhi, okay, and then there's a very big jewelry shop which has recently opened. So they have a two-story shop, and they have everything. As far as the jewelry is concerned, they have everything in their store. And then some people, they want to conduct a loot on that shop. Now they get started with their TTPs, the tactics. What tactics should they use? The techniques. What techniques should they use? And then what procedures? Lastly, what procedures they should follow. Right? Procedures are something which can be different every time, and this is something that are very trivial. Again, the same thing. Let's say procedure could be, I want to approach the first card and then knock them out, with my fist or with my gun or whatever I have in my hand. That is a procedure that they follow. Now this can be changed according to the sensitivity of the time. Yeah. Techniques that they use, that okay, I'm going to use stick, or I'm going to use my bare hands, or now I'm going to use this particular technique to conduct this operation. Then tactics is basically another high level informational procedure, and how do you want to conduct this operation, right? What routes to take, what people to talk to, make sure there is no alarm in there, first disable the alarm and everything, right? So they create their tactics. Technique again is the next thing, as you go deeper into the tactics. So start from the tactic at the very highest level. You go one step into that plan, you go to the techniques, like they should know alarm disabling. Then there are techniques to disable alarm, they should know about it. How to knock a person out in 2 seconds, they should know about it. There are techniques to do it efficiently, and then there are techniques to do it more laborly, right? So obviously they want to be quick and efficient, so they will resort to a technique which is rather new and not known to a lot of people, because they do not want the defenders to catch them. Once they go to the last step, or the most granular step of the techniques, then they come up with a process. There should be a very nicely written step-by-step process. At the 8 a.m. mark in the morning, put off your alarm, then dress up, make sure you have your masks on, make sure you have a black van with no license plate. That is the procedure. And then take this route because it is less crowded, so that you have enough room to get out of that shop and then get away. Okay, so talking from defender's perspective, blocking a procedure might not help you a lot. Blocking a technique would definitely help you, because this is where the tools will come in. The tactics, this is the most crucial one. Also, this is more complex, or the most hard thing to find. If you're able to block the tactics and techniques, then you are pretty much good with the malware. The malware is as good as gone. So again, this is what I can stress on the TTPs right now. Again, I would like to get into the details, maybe in the second presentation, when I'll particularly talk about the matrix. Then we'll see what are all these things. Alternatively, you can just visit this Mitre website, just Google Mitre attack matrix, just these three words. And the first link that appears should be mitre.org. Right? So open that up and you should see this web page, which I have posted here. You go into any of these hyperlinks, let's say into initial access. The first is drive-by compromises. Click onto it and you will see all those details charted out, the TTPs charted out. Right? So I hope that answers your question for now. We'll also, if you want more details around it, maybe we can talk about this presentation afterwards. And then I'll be able to give you a more detailed explanation, or I'll be able to expand onto my answer after this presentation. Okay, there are no more questions. Let's quickly see the models. Now, this is not very practical, but this is very necessary if you want to set up, if you are somebody who was starting or who wants to set up a maturity model or a team into your environment. Let's say if you have a blue team of 15 people, all very skilled guys, everybody is good. Now you want to start a new practice into your team, which is threat hunting. How do you do it? So this is one way to do it. Okay, so you start with the initial level, something which I am trying to promote here, something which I'm trying to encourage you guys to do it here. The last para, if you read on your left, says the process typically starts from analyzing data coming in from your SIEM or IDS. So SIEM is a person who's trying to collect data from everybody across the organization. So they are a very good starting point. So take a dump out of that SIEM for the last 24 hours, do a manual analysis of what you think is anomalous and what is not, according to you. Yeah. Your view should differ from SIEM, because SIEM is already blocking something or alerting something on the basis of the alerts of the rule setup. Again, take out something out of the IDS, because IDS anyway is not set up to block something. It'll only detect them. It'd say, hey, I think something is fishy, and then you should take a look into it. Right? So put your head into that situation and then take out all these events coming in into your IDS and getting detected by various rules, and then chart them into Excel. Again, start making those pivots, because pivots are a very good way to visualize a lot of data. And also, this is your escape way if you're not familiar with Python a lot, if you do not know a lot of scripting, then pivoting would help you a lot. So a guy like me who's not expert with Python, I heavily depend on the pivots and other visualization tools inside of Excel, which usually help me up to a very good point, right? But if you are somebody who's very good with Python, you can use PyCharm to construct your visualizations. Again, PyCharm gives you more customized views, but yeah, Excel itself is pretty much enough you wanted to start with this thing. Okay, so start with the initial phase, then you go to the minimal, procedural, all the way to the leading. The leading phase is something which will take a lot of time, also a lot of skill to get to, because at that point of time, you are typically an expert into threat hunting, or if you have a team, those guys are expert in threat hunting. At this time, you are creating only your custom theories and custom models, and you're detecting things which nobody has detected in the organizations across the organization level, right? So a very few people are there at the leading level, but yeah, this is just a theory, just a platform on how you can build yourself from 0 to 5. So there are 5 steps. So, okay. Now, just to expand on to the last slide, get ideas. What does that mean? This is the answer of the most common question, that how do I get started with threat hunting? Boss, what you're saying is, okay, but I have an Excel with me open. I have the IDS logs with me. What do I do now? What you do now is create your hypothesis first. First things first, come up with a hypothesis. Assume that your organization is already breached. There is a malware lurking in your organization for the last 10, 20, 30 days. Possible? Yes, very possible. Because APTs nowadays have become very smart. There is a resting time, or what we call dwell time, where the malware is inefficient. It is not working, it is just resting, and the timer is just off, and then it is counting time. After a good 10, 20, 30 days, it will start contacting its CMC servers. On an average, it spends 40, 45 days on an endpoint without doing anything, without touching any other process or file or anything, so that everybody is used to this file, and then nobody is even looking at it. Once you have developed enough confidence into, okay, this file is, not malicious or benign, then they start executing their commands, right? So first build your hypothesis that let's say there is a new malware 28 at the global level. So malware 28, by the way, is a Russian malware, which is also called polar bear, which has been widely used for the last 2 years, and it has a very big family of malwares. It has been used to breach a lot of companies in Southeast Asia and some part in Europe. So, as I'm quoting this example, let's say if you build your hypothesis around it. Now, take a very new malware in your case, but yeah, I'm just giving you an example. So let's say if my organization is already breached, I have a malware 28 residing in my environment somewhere. Obviously, my SIEM, IDS, IPS, firewalls, EDR, nobody has been able to detect it. It's up to me to find it out. How do I find it out? If I can find a white paper onto that malware, which will give me, okay, it has this and this behavior. Once it is installed in a system, it starts making changes to the registry. At the stack level, maybe you see certain things. It occupies certain memory pointer and something like that. So I start reading about it more and more. That is where I get ideas about how I can search for it. Now, if somebody has walked on the road, they must have left their footprint somewhere, unless they have also stolen it, right? So start making your hypothesis around the breach, and then the investigation parts come into the picture. That can be done via tools or other techniques. You can also do it manually. The most basic way, again, as I said, is the Excel, right? Excel is the most efficient way. If you have limited data, if at the point when you have more than 10 or 12 MB of data or 10 or 12 MB of file, try to split it into smaller files, otherwise might not open into your Excel. So Excel, I know that Excel's capability is limited, but yeah, this is just to give you a taste on how you can get started with manual analysis. So this is all log analysis, which sort of builds into threat hunting eventually. So after investigation, you should uncover some new patterns and TTPs. Once you do it, you report it to your SIM and everybody, so that you have a formal rule into place. Next time something like that comes up, you have an automated process. The rule will trigger. The response is already set to do certain things, that block this malware or remove it or quarantine this system, something, right? After that, once you are done, you start with a new hypothesis. So the 2 pointers which I have put in here, the first pointer is why this loop is necessary. This loop is followed to avoid one-off. What's one-off? One-off actually means a one-time activity, something which you do just once. Let's say if you have a breach and then your manager calls in and says that I want to find out what else this malware has touched. So what you'll do is essentially threat hunting. You'll just do it once because you're doing it on ad hoc purpose when it's needed. As soon as you change it to a regular activity or a continuous activity, there is your threat hunting formally placed, right? So the loop is followed to avoid one-off. The goal is to loop through the loop as quickly as possible. Okay, so you have to go through this process again and again. As I said, as soon as, so there could be two things coming out of at the fourth point. Either you will find some new patterns against your hypothesis, or you will not. If you'll not find something, that does not mean that you have not followed the process or you have not done threat hunting. Threat hunting does not result into some finding some malware every time. right? They'll give me two distinguished outcomes. One, you have found something fantastic, go ahead, report it. Second, you did not find anything, that means you're safe. That is why it's a win-win situation and people are adopting it. So once you have followed everything here, not found anything, great, start making a new hypothesis. Just Google top 10 threats as of today, or top 10 malwares as of today, or most recent malwares as of today. Take out one malware, take your pick on the list, and then start building your case around it. This is how you start your threat hunting. And that is why this slide is very important, which says get ideas. So focus on getting ideas. I know it's very hard to start getting ideas right now if you're not used to it. That is why I'm saying that start making that effort. Start utilizing, start analyzing the logs at the most basic level, at the most local level. Right. Types of threat hunting. This is where we have come into the examples. A very simple script, very simple. Now, this is a PowerShell script. This is an XML file, I believe, yeah, which goes out to the internet and then downloads two executables or two binaries. If you take a look at the longest line, which says string new object system net web client, I have taped the destination website, the first part of the destination website, which is obviously a CNC server. So it calls in or it drops cranberry.exe and logic.exe. These are the two executables which are dropped. This is a coin miner. Okay. So once this script is executed, so this is, as you can see, is a post request, goes out to the internet, goes out to the public website, and then requests for two objects and then downloads them. Also, it will put them into temporary. It's not shown here, but yeah, it'll put them into temporary and execute it from there. Once it is executed, you'll have coin miner running on your system, and you definitely not know about it because it does not create a lot of noise. It just creates its environment at a certain place in your environment, starts running itself. It starts consuming some resource. Yes, you might get into trouble sometime, but yeah, mostly this will not harm your system, so you're not expected to see this. Okay, why did I take this example? Just to give 4 pointers for you from where you can start your journey into threat hunting. I've given the example of CV 2017. I know it's a old malware, but still works for you. It still works for our case. Okay, this is to deliver the miner into a server or an endpoint, and it will start mining. Right. What you can see from this picture is there should be an abnormal network activity. I will explain in the next slide how it's an abnormal network activity. There's a malicious or unauthorized PowerShell script or usage of PowerShell at least. Right? We'll go into the next slide to see that as well. Processes and binaries. Now this is where you can see this slide in general, that Cranberry and Logic must dwell onto your system somewhere because they are downloaded. Even if they are not executed, they must reside onto your system. So if you'll basically search for a file called Cranberry or Logic, if you find a match, that means you find the malware potentially, right? Lot of other ways, like if you have downloaded cranberry.exe, which you know is a malware, simply renamed it cmd.exe, that does not cover you. Why? Because the signature will not be there, which is from Microsoft. The signature will still be from somebody else, right? So yeah, a lot of ways to detect a malware onto a system, a lot of manual ways, which I know. There could be a lot others, right? So first things first, if the executable, which seems legitimate, like cmd.exe or host.exe or explorer.exe or IE Explorer or any other thing, which is executing from temp or app data or local or user, they should be flagged as suspicious. The point is, all these binaries which are legitimate coming in from Microsoft, they're not supposed to run from user environment, right? So anything which is running from temp or under user downloads or user documents or user images or anywhere, they should be termed malicious if they have the name something like CMD. The default location is C program file system32, and then there is the etc drivers. Inside the drivers are all those system drivers, right? If a system driver is running from TMP, it does not make any sense. So that is where I'm coming to the last point, unusual behavior of application usage. Let's say if there's an application which generally does not take a lot of CPU, and now it is taking a lot of CPU and memory. That might be an indicator that this is something which is not legitimate. And this is where I will again quote the example of Sysmon and uh, process monitor and all those things. Okay, so next things. This is more. This is like no, these are all gems for blue teamers, especially for the SIM people. I have scoured through some websites. I've gone through a lot of documentation to find out these events, which are very relevant when it comes to searching for some particular data in your SIM. In bold, I have put some explanation to them, what they mean and how they are relevant. So I'm not going to go through all of these. Take me some time. I'm just not trying to read everything on the screen. But yeah, for example, if there is a policy change, the fourth item which you see, or the fourth row, if you see, event ID 4793 and so far, onwards, they respond to policy change. What they mean to you is you can look for who did what. Right? If somebody created a new policy out of the blue, which was not sanctions, which was not approved, which was not gone through the change process, that means this is malicious. Coming down to the second last event, event ID 4698, new scheduled task up, or I've just written it SCH task, so it's scheduled task. Whenever there is a new scheduled task up, it's worth looking into, because this is how the malwares set their routines on how frequent they want to go to the CMC server, how frequent they want to pull the information, or when do you want one. Let's say if there's a coin miner, it can set up a routine that only after 2 in the morning till 3 in the morning I want to mine, because I want to evade all the detections. I know my efficiency would be lesser, but I will evade the, I will live to see another day to mine something more out of the server, right? So they work on that policy, and that is why new scheduled task is very relevant to you. The last one, a local new user created. If you have a central authentication system set up like an Active Directory or any other directory, then this becomes highly relevant. Nobody should be able to create a local account unless approved from the management, unless have proper approval and everything. So yeah, so this is how it will help you create a list out of it, take out these events and take out a report for the last 24 hours of, let's say, the first item, login failure reasons. There's a particular reason which ends with 6A. So it starts with 0x0000 and then 6A or 6D, which means is failed password. This can indicate a password spray attack. Okay, somebody is trying to use a lot of passwords for one user or multiple users. They will end up giving you a lot of 4625s. So you can simply take out a list of all the 4625s in the last 24 hours, and you will immediately see all those people who are, whose password is not working. Either their credential has expired, or they are logged out of their system, or there is somebody who's trying to actively brute force into the system. So that could lead to three situations. If you clear out the first two, you should be able to find the malware, and then you can trace that malware to its origin from there. So all of these are nothing but starting points for you. Start your hunting with the very, very basic event IDs and everything. Yeah, because if somebody has done something in your environment, it does not matter how smart they are. As long as you have auditing enabled, you should be able to catch them. You just have to take a look at more and more data. Now spend more time in front of the computer, but invariable of all those things, should be able to catch them. Now, generally, I also talk about the auditing policies, because a lot of things in this list would not appear in your SIM by default, right? So some people might complain that I do not see 4688, which is new process created, which is understandable, because every time you, let me take an example here, that if you open up Chrome, a 4688 will appear in your computer. A new process is created, that's fine. Every time you open a new tab in your Chrome, this process will come up, or this event will be registered. So now you can see that this is very verbose, very troubling for the logging purpose, right? So let's say if you open 10 tabs, you close 10 tabs, again open 5 tabs, there are 15 events for one application. What you're doing is simply opening a new tab and closing it. So that is why it's very verbose in nature. But yeah, this also ends up giving you a lot more information about what is going on inside of that application. Yeah. New service installed again. This is something which is very relevant. As soon as you install a new binary onto an endpoint, be it any executable, you'll have new service installed if it's a service based executable, which mostly are. So this becomes very relevant. Audit log cleared, something which is super rare to find. No, that does not happen, or happens only once in a blue moon. But yeah, if you find it, that is a very strong point to start your investigation around it. Somebody has cleared out the log. If it is not done automatically because of the system policies, then it becomes highly suspicious. Why would someone go ahead and clear that audit files or audit logs? Yeah, so if you want to hunt with the event IDs, here's your starting point. If you want to start hunting with some mindset, like the first mindset, it try to find abnormal network activity, try to find usage of PowerShell and everything. This is your starting point. Third one that I have is, this is where I will stress about the network. Okay, so this is the same coin miner. If you'll take a look at the first line, notice the first line, the starting point. It says go into C program files and then under a folder cc -64 and execute the binary cc miner -x64. Right? Execute it with some encryption, right? With possibly 10 character long of cipher. That is their secret, this much long secret, and then go to this, use the TCP sort of communication and go to pool.grlc something on port 3333. That is your indicator, right? Why would somebody want to go to a website on port 3333? Because all the websites generally work on 8443 unless they have a customized listening port. Yeah. If it's on in the internet, it makes no sense to work them on a customized ports. If you have an internal application which is hosted on 8080 or 8090, I don't care. It's not that relevant because it's an internal application, right? If something is on the internet and if something is running over the web and not running on port 8443, then you should start looking into it. What is going outside and what is coming in from that website. That is how you can hunt into your network layer. And this information is super easy to find. You can take a look at your firewall logs, dump everything in an Excel again. I know that I've been repeating it a lot of times, but yeah, this is how I try to do things. So works out for me very well. Hunting on the host, again, look for the PowerShell argument, which you can get from Sysmon, or if you have an EDR, all the better. It gives you the command line output of whatever is being run through PowerShell or command prompt. In my case, in this example, if the PowerShell had CC miner in their argument, that means that something bad is happening. I know it for sure, right? So just giving you example of CC miner, again, the same vulnerability, 2017. So yeah, this is the malware. This is how you catch them. You can see that the connection here is established. Something is pulled. As you can see, a lot of yes. If you just go towards the end, you can see 4 yes or 5 yeses. Right? So something is happening here. So let's not go into the detail, but yeah, this is just to give you more and more ideas around how you can get started with your hunting, both on the network and host level. If you have an EDR, it will be mighty helpful in your host hunting. And on the network level, a firewall should do for the starters. The network hunt, again, now this will require some understanding about networking. If you're not familiar with a lot of default protocols and a lot of ports and protocols, what is used where, then I suggest you start reading about it. Let's say if I said TACAX authentication, which is a network-based authentication, happens on port 49. Let's say if I say Kerberos authentication in Windows, happens on port 88. LDAP works on 389. LDAP-S works on 636. So you should know these ports because all of these are used for specific purposes. But if I see HTTP protocol or if I see something going on to the internet on port 49, makes no sense. Why would a web communication take a destination port of TACAX, and why not 8443? Unless I have a strong reason, I want to suspect it. Let's take a look at Cozy Bear or Cozy Duke, which again is the family of the APT28 malware. Okay, So they spread out a lot of information on ports varying from 21 to 995. See, all of this is going on to the internet, just not on port 443. Now, if you're able to find something like this, see how helpful it will be for your organization and for your anomaly, for your analysis, right? So you can see that TLS is being used. Something is encrypted and sent out to the internet, just not on 443. Why is that? Now you should begin to think. Now, what I've written there is the combination of four things: common ports, common protocols, and then custom ports and custom protocols. Okay. Common ports are something which I described, like port 25 for email, 21 for FTP, 80 for HTTP, something like that. And then common protocols are HTTP, DNS, THCP, Kerberos, all these are very common. And then there are custom ports and custom protocols, like 4444. Guys who have worked with Metasploit know that this is the default listening port for Metasploit. If a reverse shell is created, if a backdoor is created, the information is sent to the hacker on 4444. So this is the default port. If the hacker is very fairly new, they have not changed the default port, it's very likely that the malware would not last for a lot of time, right? Because people know about it on the blue team side. So this is a non-standard port or an uncommon port. Or let's say take an example of torrent. Torrent works on 6969 to contact the peers. This is a very famous port. I'm just quoting. I was doing a hunting for torrents. So I started off with these things, the most common thing. There's a range from 6961 to 6969. All of these ports are variably used for the torrenting activities. Right? Why is this public? Because torrent is not malicious all the times. That is why all this information is very public. So you can gain from this information, start building your use case again. So the idea is to look for something which is being happening into your network and also being going unnoticed. Okay. The second example, the fake rat uses a modified SSL to transmit data. And if I go to the, okay, so I have not included another slide, which I have included in the previous presentations. People have come up with a customized TLS implementation or SSL implementation. But what happens is most of the times that cipher suite is very small. The length of the cipher is very small. So if you have something which can decipher it, there are high chances that you are able to decipher it. Just take an output of one packet and then run your decipher over it. If you are able to do it, you can decipher the complete conversation, put it into Wireshark, right click onto the packets, follow the TCP stream. You should be able to see what is being requested through GET or what is being posted, and all those things, right? So you can see all of that. So that is poor TLS implementation, which is followed by the hackers because they do not expect the blue teamers to even take a look into the TLS implementation. Once they have encrypted it through their customized TLS, they say that we are pretty much safe because people, as soon as they see TLS, they say that fine, this is encrypted. I'm not able to do anything out of it. Not true. If you can take a look at the cipher, the length of that cipher, and if it varies from the standards like 128 or 256, that means that this is something which is malicious. That is straight away an indicator. So yeah, a lot of indicators for you guys on the network level, on the host level, on the TCP level, on the application level. So you can start playing with the data you have. There is a lot of data already running through your environment. Nobody is stopping you from taking a copy, putting it into an Excel or any other analysis platform, and then going through it. So with that, we come to the end of our presentation. It was a short presentation, I know. I wanted to give you guys some quick pointers on how you can get started, get your hands dirty with those analysis. And then if you want to do something else, something more advanced, something more customized, maybe we can have another session and then we can talk about it. So Marvin, can you just check if there's a question? I just saw a pop-up here. Right.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
go
So
ahead.
we have three questions. One from Sumit who asked about. So he asks, other than IP addresses, domains, hashes, what else should be included in the IOCs to be included as part of threat monitoring to make it more effective?
Okay. Monitoring is one thing, right? And then threat hunting is another. Monitoring is towards more traditional approach, the more conventional approach. You are leaning towards the SIM, which is also very effective. I know. So there's a whole list of IOCs, and then you should also know about IOAs, which is indicator of an attack. Okay, slightly different from IOCs. I would also recommend that you read about CVSS and CWSS. CVSS, I know that a lot of people know about it. Similarly, there is common weakness scoring system, CWSS, which differs from CVSS. So if you guys are strong in your theory, in your concept, you should have no problem in creating a collection of it and then putting it into monitoring. So yeah, coming back to the question very quickly, hashes again very common, IP addresses on the network level. Then you can have domains, as you have mentioned. You can also have URLs, right? Uh, so these are the most common indicators. Then you can have file name, right? There are a bunch of properties inside the file, like you know, you can just take an example of a malware and then and just see that how many IOC does it give you. And again, as I said, the threat intel would not help you so much, yeah, because it mostly talks about all these trivial things, all these things that can be devoid very easily, or they can be escaped very easily. What I would rather want you to monitor is the tactics and techniques, like Mimikatz application. If it is being executed anywhere, if mimikatz.exe is being executed anywhere at any point of time, you should be able to catch on to it and then build your use case around it, right? So now you want to know what happened before it was executed and then what is happening after it is executed. Then you should be able to find something really interesting. Yeah, because IP address is something that can be readily changed. As I said, I'm using VPN, so it does not matter what IP you block. I simply connect to some other nation and continue with my attack. Right? If I'm using Tor, so there is no guarantee that I will land onto the same public IP next time I use the Tor. And this is the use of Tor, right? So yes, IP addresses can be divided. Again, hash, if I have a polymorphic malware, the hash will change. So it's a variable now, it's not a constant. But yeah, there are other things which are constant, like how they execute what they do it. The list of their CNC servers, if you can get it, it's very effective. The domains that it uses, the URLs that it uses. Then you go to the more something which is a lot, an attacker puts them a lot near and dear. Something like what tactics they use, what executables they use as part of their execution, and all those things. So you should rather focus on them than the IP addresses and hashes and all those things. Keep pulling them, that is all good. But yeah, also keep an eye on how it is executing or how it is behaving actually. So you'd have to get into manual behavioral analysis. All right. I hope that answers the question. Next question, Marvin.
Yeah. The another question just from Sumit is that for ransomware specifically, what extra precautions can be taken in terms of monitoring it, in terms of specific log sources inclusion to detect it much earlier, and at what stage of the kill chain should it be detectable?
Okay. It's a very open-ended question. I'd want to go through it. There are a few pointers in my mind. So something which comes on top of my mind is how much logging do you want to do? How much logging are you capable of doing? Let's say if you have something like ArcSight implemented, something like QRadar implemented, there'd be a license limitation. Okay. If you have some other tool like NIF, is again a very good tool, Splunk, things which are sort of ingesting the big data, right? Then they should have some other licensing model with them. So it is a subject to license. That is the first point. The second point, which I want to talk about the ransomware is how new or old the ransomware is. If it's fairly new, you'll have less and less indicators available in the market, so less and less chance of detecting it in the first place, right? So there is not a very generic approach to it, because if there was, the ransomware would not be on the rise. That is the answer, the shortest answer to the question, right? Why they're on the rise? Because there is no particular pattern which you can fit into. There is no pattern which you say that I block A, B, C, and D. Now I'm safe with all the ransomwares. So, because you'll have to be highly flexible with your approach with each malware. because each malware is created in different languages. You know, they use different arguments. Like one malware might want to be fileless, the other might want to be not fileless, and all those things. So there are a lot of variables which come into the picture, which prevents them from being detectable or being very detectable in general. So it is subject to how fairly new or old the malware is. If it is old, a lot of IOCs will be there. The third part is where you can detect it. The best chance that you have is detect it before it has encrypted everything. So most of the ransomware which I have seen is they try to create a lot of SMB connections on 445. They also use 139, 137, 135, which is NetBIOS, because they want to discover more and more hosts in the VLAN. Not just in the VLAN, they want to extend their search into the other VLANs also. So if we are keeping an eye on the NetBIOS connections, the SMB connections, you have a very strong monitoring already set up. Next up is if there's a ransomware, what it does on the file level is something very interesting. I put a rule into the same. So what essentially a ransomware does, it changes the file extension. In order to do that, it will have to open the file, modify it. Yeah? As soon as it does, you should see a process, a file was created. This is a particular event into Windows. A file was modified, a file was created, something like that. I created it 2.5 years ago. So you should see something like that. If you see hundreds of files created within 2 or 3 minutes, at least you should get to know that there is a ransomware active in progress at one particular endpoint. So we have not used any EDR or anything. We have just used the logs of this server. We have just crept on one particular log that a file is created, a file is modified, okay? And we have grouped them. If I see hundreds of files modified in 2 minutes, that means, or 1 minute, because that's all it will take the ransomware to encrypt everything. At least you can restrict that malware to that endpoint. Immediately disconnect it to the LAN, obviously, orphan it, so that it is not able to reach out to other members of that VLAN. That is the first thing that you can do. And then once you have detected it, then you can run your searches on your network for similar behavior. In parallel, you can run your investigation onto that endpoint, see how far you can go in the endpoint to get to know when was it downloaded, who downloaded it, how far it has gone, and all those things. Okay, so next question. Marvin, can you hear
Yes,
me?
yes, yes. So another question from Dinesh is in regards to Linux event IDs, like anything specific to look for on Linux server.
Right. So, okay, Linux is a different ball game altogether. Okay, does not obey the law of general science, right? So, it does not have anything in general. If I talk about the event IDs, it does have the process IDs, but then I think those are subject to reboots, right? Where in Windows you have a very strong auditing mechanism, but in Linux you'll have to resort to the files which record the events as they happen onto the system. So there you have to take a slightly different approach. There you have to monitor files rather than events. Okay. So you can monitor secure. There's a file called secure. Now most of the people know that there's a file called audit under var log, which takes down or which jots down all the audit events into the Linux. Not a lot of people know about the file called secure, which logs in the same the audit logs, the same authentication logs, only for the elevated accounts, root or root-like accounts. So it adds a lot into your investigation. So next time when you open up the Linux system, go into varlog, search for a file called secure, tail that file, see what you see, and how it is different from what is logged into that audit file. Right? What else you can log is the cron tab. If there is a new entry in the cron tab, it is similar to schedule task into your Windows. So next time there is a new cron job activated, make sure you have noted it down. Make sure you know who has created it, what is the purpose, what is the frequency of it, and all those things. Right? So there you have to audit the files, or there you have to read the files rather than the events. Okay. Yeah, so that is your approach. And then we can talk about more and more events and more files once that is done. So this is just to set up the basic. Okay, next question.
Yeah. So another question from Dinesh: where can we get sample malware reports? And he would like some references as well.
Okay, that's a great question. I did include a hyperlink, but I can see that those hyperlinks are not working. I'd give you some manual inputs, and we'd also include it in the description box in our YouTube video. So Palo Alto has a section of engineers or a separate unit. They call it Unit 42. Just search for Palo Alto Unit 42. You should be able to go to that page where they have hosted a lot of white papers and a lot of malware research reports onto a lot of recent malwares. That is one thing which I go to. My second go-to point is the FireEye malware reports. If you want to trust any of the vendors for the malware reports, you can trust FireEye. That is the first place you should go to. Second is the Palo Alto Unit 42. And then there are a lot of other websites which conduct independent researches on a malware, and they put out their blogs and everything. I've not seen anything as efficient as the Unit 42 and the FireEye. So, so read out a lot of reports available on FireEye's portal. They're all public. And then Palo Alto Unit 42 is another place you should look into. Then third is you should visit SANS official website. They also have a lot of data around the malwares. Okay, start going through the ID SIM logs. Yeah, this is something which I have talked about at length. Okay, throughout the presentation. So I'm going to leave it to that. And then work on getting open source threat intel. As I said, open source threat intel is going to act as a sidekick, more like what Robin does with Batman. So threat intel is your Robin, but the role of the Batman is the role of threat hunting. So you'll have to take that responsibility and do it, right? Robin might have something charted out that you have to do certain things in a certain manner or certain fashion. But if you're a Batman, if you are the threat hunter, then you have to do things in your own way, develop your own strategy and your own style. Could be different from everybody else in the world, because that is the essence of threat hunting. It's purely customized and it's also proactive. So yeah. All right. Any other questions that we have, Marvin?
Yeah. So we have another one. From Manas R. So he asks, on a bad day, what are the chances that threat hunters can get hold of something really important, and how to convince organizations to have a threat hunter along with the monitoring team?
Mhm. Okay, that's a great question. So on a bad day, it could be really bad. So you can get your hands on uh, anything which is a zero data X, say zero logon, which was very popular very recently, right? If you are an active threat hunter, you might see it before anyone else in the world, right? So in that way, your bad day becomes the best day in your research and everything. Then you'll get to publish information about something which nobody else in the world has seen. So everybody is potentially blind to it. That is the first answer. How do you convince your management? I don't know actually, because no, anything if it's new in nature, people at the management level or the managerial level are a little resistant about it. They say that we already have all these things set up. We have our SIM going on. We have our incident response going on. What is the need of threat hunting all of a sudden? Now, it depends on your relationship with the manager, also your position in the organization. If you're a L1 or an analyst, you might be dismissed fairly quickly. If you're a manager, there might be some weight into what you're going to talk about. So even if you're an analyst, you should put this word through to the manager, and then you can quote the example of the kingdom. I've seen that it's very effective. I have given this, or I've quoted this example a lot of times to a lot of people while explaining it formally as well, right? So there comes the question that, do you want to wait for the malwares to come to you and then try to see what you can do on best effort basis, or do you want to create some team at no extra cost, basically in the starting? So make sure that you involve these keywords like, there will be no extra cost, sir. and then what we'll be doing is going to highly benefit our cause, and then we might find something which nobody else is going to find. Make sure you have talked from the business perspective. That will have them going. Yeah? It will develop a lot of interest in the manager's view, right? So you can quote this example that, do you want to wait for the malware to come to you and then see what you can do, or do you want to go into the malware's kingdom and then try to catch them? Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Yes, we have another one from Smith. He mentions, won't open source TI lead to more false positives? Would you recommend any specific open source threat intel?
Okay. And that is why I was saying that it is very trivial. Yeah, so it's the same thing. Because it's trivial, it's available in abundance. That is why it's more prone to being a false positive, right? Maltego is a tool which has two versions. One is community edition, one is free edition. Sorry, premium edition. So grab that community edition, install it onto a Windows server or an endpoint, and then you can pull a lot of threat intel into that. It will not only pull a lot of information for you, it will also contextualize it. It will connect the dots and show you the bigger picture. So I'm giving you one step ahead. No? I'm giving an answer which is one step ahead on threat intel. So if it's available for free, if it is public, it's not matter what vendor you go to. Everybody will have the same information, right? So yeah, it's like if you are in a class and if it's the most easy question, everybody would have the same answer, right? So there is no intelligence in that. Everybody knows. So if you go to in a class where people are of sixth standard, and if you'll ask what's 2 plus 2, everybody will have that answer. There is no real intelligence. Why? Because this is fairly easy to guess, fairly easy to answer, and then information is available publicly. But if you go into class which is filled with sixth standard people and you ask a theorem in the seventh standard, not a lot of people will be able to answer. But those who are proactive, who are also reading things from the next class, they should be able to talk something about it, if not everything, right? That is my point. And that is where there are two types of threat intel available, premium and free. CrowdStrike is one thing which I'll highly recommend. It comes at a cost, but it is the best intel that you're going to get. The second best is your X-Force Premium. There is X-Force Free and Premium. Free is not very worthy of your attention, right? In free, there is Alien Vault, okay? There is Passive Total, there is Risk IQ, there is Squirrel. There is a lot of vendors which collect a lot of TIs and then sort them and then give it to you. They all look very good visually. They're not worth a lot. So if you can manage a premium threat intel, it should benefit your cause a lot. But that comes with a cost, obviously. So yeah. Okay. Next.
So we have a question from Dinesh. Any inputs on hidden malware under under an JPEG, PNG, or MP4?
Oh, nice. So yeah, what we are talking about is um, now steganography, right? It's very hard. First of all, it's very hard to detect something which is hidden inside of something. But it's the same thing, as I said, the fundamentals remain the same as long as you are looking at everything through the glasses. What that means is, if you have auditing enabled in your endpoint, which is noting everything down, there is a very good chance that you'll see something happening proactively. It's not matter if you hide your malware behind a photo or a video or a sound clip or anything else. As long as it is getting executed, it will invariably go out to the CNC servers. It will try to pull the dropper or the malware. It will try to create the backdoor. So from there on, the story is the same. Yes, you would be able to ship it into the systems. You have a very good way to ship it inside. Fine, you'll be able to evade that, but not afterwards. Once you start executing the steps, and we know that the malware is not going to execute in one go. Most of the malwares are split into two binaries. The first binary, and the sole purpose of that is to just beacon. Just stay there, complete the dwell time, and then try to beacon in every now and then, so that the server knows that I have an active endpoint here. right? After some time, it drops another binary, which is the dropper malware. That is the actual malware. So you still have a very good chance of detecting all those. Yes, they'll be able to evade your the first level of detection, but not afterwards. But yeah, steganography is the best way to hide something and then get it passed through. Again, you can also see it there. See, there are ways to detect everything if you know something about it. If there is a malware residing behind a JPEG, obviously the file size will increase. That is your indicator there. Now it then it goes down to the size of the malware itself. So, but yeah, that could be one indicator. Right, fine. There could be others indicators as well. If it's as long as it's a JPEG, it will not get executed. It will have to change the extension somewhere. As long as it's changed, then this is the second indicator. Right, Marvin. In the questions.
Uh, no, I think we're good, but there is a request from Himanshu Jindal, who has requested for an session on SIEM for more explanation. So I think that is something that we can definitely think about.
Right, great. Right, towards the end, I thought only Sumit is there with us because we were having questions from him on the. Feels great uh, to be accompanied with a lot of people. I hope that this session were helpful. This was brought to you by the team of NIF. So everybody has worked hard. Uh, so I want to thank DNIF for giving me this platform to talk about something which I'm doing. I wanted to talk about it for a long time. So Marvin has actually convinced me after a lot of calls. So that is the result of this conversation. So thank you, Marvin. Thank you, the DNF team, for having me here. Thank you, everyone who has joined in for this lovely session. I hope you had some information about threat hunting. I know that this was not a very detailed session, but yeah, as I said earlier, I wanted to build the background and then we'll munch upon it. Right, so that's about it from my side.